It's going to take a decade to unwind and undo the damage that the Biden presidency did to our country and, quite frankly, foreign policy. It's long been known in D.C. that once you get hired here, it's hard to be fired. And so what we're simply doing is bringing accountability to the job place, to the marketplace, if you will. Kudos to Elon Musk and Doge for the work that they're doing. They've taken a sledgehammer to D.C. and said enough is enough. And again, this is why President Trump won. It is America was sick and tired of D.C. getting into their pocketbooks, the weaponization of the government against its people, and they were looking for a change agent, and that's President Donald Trump. When you have these judges that literally are doing this in an activist manner, but when they bring it into the courtroom to attack and undermine the president, it's an attack on us, we the people, and enough is enough.
AMAC and AMAC members are fighting every day for the conservative values that built this nation, values the radical left wants to tear down. Now, we've been sounding the alarm about unelected bureaucrats sabotaging the will of the people, and we're cheering President Donald Trump's return. We're looking forward to what he's doing on the border crisis, unleashing American energy and dismantling the woke agenda. He's also wrestling with activist judges and elitists who would rather see America fail than thrive. From reining in the deep state to securing our rights and borders, these are the battles that define our future, and we need bold leaders who get it. Congressman Andy Ogles, a Tennessee patriot, brings the sharp mind and fearless resolve that makes him one of the smartest voices to tackle these challenges head on. Congressman Ogles, it's such a pleasure to have you back with me on Better for America. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for that introduction. Wow, I'll have to do this more often. But no, I mean, you're right. What we're seeing now is the judiciary overreaching its authority. The founding fathers warned us about a too powerful, overreaching judiciary, how it could tip the balance of powers. And so you have the President of the United States who's executing his constitutional authority, his constitutional right, quite frankly, to be president and to do the jobs that are ascribed, or the authorities and powers ascribed to him. And so when you have these judges that literally are doing this in an activist manner, look, a judge has the right to be an activist on his or her own time, but when they bring it into the courtroom to attack and undermine the president, it's an attack on us, we the people, and enough is enough. So that's why I've drafted articles of impeachment. I have articles against 3 different judges. My good friends Andrew Clyde and Eli Crane have articles as well, and we're trying to hold these judges accountable. We'll see what happens next, but somebody's got to speak up, and we've taken on that mantle.
Yeah, and that's what the American people really want. They see it for what it really is. So I think that is a good approach, and certainly more and more Americans are wising up and understanding that this is really political warfare or lawfare, if you will. At AMAC here, we have long warned about the unelected bureaucrats who really are undermining the will of the American people, and we love your End the Deep State Act. This really takes aim at that. It codifies President Trump's order to hold these federal workers accountable with, I think, really solid conservatives like Lauren Boebert is behind it. Other organizations like the Heritage Action are behind you. What is your plan to push this through, and how is it going to help President Trump finally drain the swamp that the left really loves to protect?
Well, when you look at President Trump's executive order, or, Schedule F, what it does is it allows the president or his departments to fire individuals that, quite frankly, aren't doing their jobs. You have individuals that don't show up to work. They get to work, they undermine the secretary or the director, and they're in a protected class. And so, the average American doesn't have a guaranteed job. You have to do it, you have to perform, you have to hit metrics, and if you don't, your boss, your employer is going to fire you. And so it's long been known in D.C. that once you get hired here, it's hard to be fired. And so what we're simply doing is bringing accountability to the job place, to the marketplace, if you will, that if you're not doing your job, and we literally had someone on a hot mic, an employee, that said that they were going to actively undermine the Secretary of Homeland Security. I mean, think about that. This individual stated on record or on a hot mic that they were going to go to work with one purpose, which was to undermine their boss. And so, that individual should be fired, right? Because clearly, not to mention the national security implications with that. But that being said, this simply brings accountability back to the job place, that if you're going to be here in D.C., you're going to work hard, you're going to do your job. And you can be, again, just like the judges, you can be an activist at home, but when you come to work, you have a job to do.
That's exactly right. Now, the following question comes from an AMAC member, actually. We do reach out to members. We ask for their feedback. And they were curious about a proposed resolution to amend the 22nd Amendment, which currently limits U.S. presidents to 2 terms.
Right.
This would allow for a 3rd term under specific conditions. Now, given that the 2-term limit was established to prevent excessive concentration of power, how do you address concerns from folks that might say your proposal could really undermine this safeguard, and potentially set a precedent for an extended presidential tenure?
Well, to be clear, the only time it applies is if someone runs for office, so President Trump, and when they run for re-election, they lose. So there has to be a gap between their 2 terms. And if that occurs, then they would be eligible to run for a 3rd term. Only twice in history has that happened. Once was the first time was Grover Cleveland, who served, I think it was the 22nd and 24th president. And then, of course, President Trump, who's 45 and 47. But what that does is when you look at, so you have President Trump for 4 years, you had Joe Biden. It's going to take a decade to unwind and undo the damage that the Biden presidency did to our country and, quite frankly, foreign policy. And so you have President Trump. He was reelected to a 2nd term. And then he has if this passes, would have the opportunity to go before the American people to say, hey, do you want me to continue? Do you want me to keep doing the things that I'm doing to fix the bad actions by President Joe Biden? And so I think it's a smart approach to something like this, especially considering the damage that Joe Biden did to our country. And that being said, my bill drives the left crazy. It's funny to watch, but I think it's a conversation we need to have. Now, keep in mind, it has to pass the House, has to pass the Senate, has to be ratified by the states. And so the odds of getting it through are obviously difficult, but that doesn't mean that we don't try.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, with President Trump back in charge, you have cheered his moves to take down the cartels, to scrap this DEI nonsense, and really put America first. As AMAC CEO myself, I hear from AMAC members every day. They're fed up with the left's attacks and the establishment's games, especially under Joe Biden. What's the toughest hurdle that you see Trump facing from the elites and the deep state? And how can our AMAC community really rally behind America First policies to keep this country strong?
Yeah, I think right now the biggest threat to the presidency are these activist judges that are continually undermining the president of the United States and his constitutional authority. So I would say to your members, reach out to your representative and let them know that you support impeachment or some sort of punitive action against these judges that have weaponized the courts against the president of the United States. And this really is an extension of the weaponization of the justice system against the American people. We saw that under Biden. Obviously, President Trump has come in and has rectified that. But that being said, these judges are taking it upon themselves to undermine the president, to undermine the Constitution, and to undermine law. And that can't be tolerated.
Now, Elon Musk, he supports what you're doing. His retweet of your bill to impeach these activist judges really caught our eye here at AMAC. With him pushing DOGE alongside Trump's team, it's really a powerhouse combo. How do you see the partnership really stopping those woke judges from trampling our rights? And I guess what's the next step to make sure that the courts quit meddling in these conservative wins?
Well, again, I think we're going to have to take some sort of action. Probably the swiftest way to do it would be some sort of funding or defunding mechanism. But we'll see. We'll have conversations with the Speaker on how, and Jim Jordan, Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, on how we move forward. And then kudos to Elon Musk and DOGE for the work that they're doing. They've taken a sledgehammer to D.C. and said enough is enough. And again, this is why President Trump won. Is America was sick and tired of D.C. getting into their pocketbooks, the weaponization weaponization of the government against its people, and they were looking for a change agent, and that's President Donald Trump. So I'm a huge fan of the president and Elon. I reach out to them on a regular basis, and it's been a very good, very fruitful relationship. That being said, I'm an advocate for them and the work that they're doing, and we'll just keep fighting the good fight. And like I said, a lot of Trump's executive orders, I carry the legislation that mirrors those. But again, it's because it's a no-nonsense approach to fixing this country. And it's important, too, by the way, to point out that the president's had all of these executive actions. Well, those are executive orders. Those can be undone by the next president. So it's important that we codify or change those or turn those into law so that they are long-lasting and survive into the next term, whoever's the next president, which presumably would be J.D. Vance.
That's right. We do need to see lasting change. We don't want to see a reversal, and now's the time to act. So it's so important that we're talking about these things. And you are truly a leader in many of these caucuses, and these are issues that matter so much to AMAC members, like border security, Second Amendment rights, of course, DOJ's efforts. We've got to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. But beyond your bills, what are some other priorities that you're really fired up about to tackle this term?
Well, I think the big one is we've got to fix the immigration system. So that first starts with securing the border and making sure that, and it's not just the people that are coming here and flooding our country. It's the drugs and the guns that flow back and forth across our borders. And so when you look at the tariffs that the president proposed on Mexico and Canada, largely that was because of the fentanyl trafficking, which we know the damage it's doing to our children and to our campuses and the threat that is to the American people. And so we've got to be proactive. And then obviously we have to look, this is our country. We get to decide who comes in. We also get to decide who has to leave. And so we've got to have an honest and quite frankly tough conversation about deportations and sending people back from where they came. Look, if you came here illegally, your very first act when you came to the United States of America was a crime. You're a criminal. And again, it's a tough conversation. It's a hard conversation. But again, if you and I were to go to France and we got in there illegally, they'd kick us out. Germany, they would kick us out. The UAE, they would kick us out. Mexico, they would kick us out. Every other country would do this, right? But somehow, because we're the United States of America, we're not allowed to do it. Well, that's bullcrap, pardon my French. But that being said, we have to do this. We have to restore the rule of law. And look, you have cities and blue mayors, Democrat cities that are saying enough is enough. You've got to turn off the spigot. This is what their cries to Joe Biden, and Trump has done that. And again, I think that's why we're going to have gains in the midterms is where we fix the border. We're going to continue to work on immigration, and we're going to make those tough choices, whether it be on crime, whether it's defending your Second Amendment right, pushing back against these activist woke judges and a weaponized justice system. These are big tasks ahead of us, but it's got to be done. And Joe Biden was a failure as a president, and Donald Trump is fixing it.
Well, our AMAC members love to hear that. It is so important. This is just basic common sense. We've got to get back to what's worked. And really the idea that America is a great place for prosperity and that each and all have that right to pursue the American dream. Congressman Ogles, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your perspectives with us today. And just so appreciate you here. Look forward to having you back with us soon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
To all of you out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. That wraps up today's conversation. I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights, for giving us a lot to think about as we navigate the challenges that are facing our country. So whether you agree or disagree, one thing is clear. These are issues that impact all of us, and they deserve serious discussion. So to all of our members, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. God bless you all.
First Fidelity Reserve, AMAC's official bullion and rare coin partner, is offering a free copy of their award-winning Precious Metals Guide to help you safely and easily invest in gold and silver. Bank of America, Citi and America's gold expert, Dr. Mike Fulgens, First Fidelity's expert advisor, all predict gold will exceed $3,400 an ounce in 2025. Bank of America calls gold the ultimate safe haven and advises clients to do what central banks are doing, buy gold. Don't miss out on $3,400 gold. Call First Fidelity Reserve today at 800-336-1630. That's 800-336-1630 for your award-winning Precious Metals Guide.